In this video, we're going to learn a little bit about functions in Excel. We've already seen that formulas can be used to calculate an answer. So for instance, if I had the number 3 and the number 4 in cells A1 and A2, and I wanted the answer to both of those numbers added up, in other words, the sum of those numbers to appear in cell A3, I can type in a formula. And we saw that a formula always must begin with an equal sign, and then we type in what were known as our cell references. We don't actually hard code the values like this, even though that will work. But the problem there we saw was that if we changed one of these numbers, then the answer doesn't reflect that, because the answer is still being calculated using the sum of the original two numbers. So instead what we do is we type in cell references in our formula. So we type in the actual cell reference, that's the column followed by the row number, the column followed by the row number of the cell which has the number in it. So that's going to be equal cell A1 plus A2. Sorry, A2. And then we press enter and we get the same value, but this time when we change a number in one of the cells, the answer is updated automatically to reflect that. So formulas are great and we need to use them, but you can imagine if we had a very, very long list of numbers here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to type in very quickly some other numbers like this. We don't want that / there, that would really mess things up. I can then use a formula. I can go A1 plus A2 plus A3. That's very long-winded though, okay? There is a quicker way of doing it. So in this video, we're going to look at 4 functions. We're going to look at the sum function, the min function, the max function, and the average function. So in the next section, the first part that we're going to look at, or the first function that we're going to look at, is the sum function. In the introduction of the video, we saw that we can still use a formula to type in an expression. In other words, something that will produce a result, produce an answer. So for instance, I could type in equals A1 and A2 and A3, but we saw that that's quite long-winded. So that's why we have functions. Functions are kind of like formulas, but they're built into Excel. Functions will do a lot of the same work as a formula, but they'll do it with an awful lot less typing and a lot less work on our part. And the way functions work is, again, we have to use the equal sign, and then we have to what's known as call the function by its name. Every function that's in Excel has a name, and there are many, 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 many functions in Excel which do a wide variety of mathematical operations. We're only going to look at 4 of them, but they're 4 of the most useful functions as well. So we're going to look at the sum function, the min function, the max function, and the average function. In this section, we're going to look at the sum function. And the sum of 2 or any more numbers added up is simply, the sum of 2 or any more numbers is simply those 2 numbers added up. So if we want to get the sum of 4 numbers, we simply add the 4 numbers. If you want to get the sum of 2 numbers, you just add the 2 numbers. That's what the sum function is going to do in this particular case. It's going to sum up these 8 numbers and give us the sum total of these 8 numbers. So instead of typing in equals A1 plus A2 plus A3, well, first of all, we're going to type in the name of the function. The name of the function is sum. You don't need to worry about uppercase or lowercase because Excel is always going to convert it anyway. So I'm just going to type in equals sum. Then what we do is we have to open up a round bracket. And we do that by holding down the Shift key and pressing the number 9 on our keyboard. Now, because the round bracket is over the 9, it's the top symbol on the 9 key. That means we have to hold down Shift and press the number 9 once. Just tap the number 9 once to get the opening bracket. Remember, Shift and any key which has a top symbol on it will give you that top symbol. Don't hold down 9 or you'll get this. You'll get a string of them which you don't want. You only want 1. So we open up a round bracket and then we put in what's known as our range of cells that we want to add. The very first cell in this range of cells that I want to include in my function is the A1 cell. So I type in A1. And you can see Excel does a very useful thing here. It color codes the cells. So it's color coded the first cell in blue, and you can see that A1 here is also coded in blue as well. It's colored in blue. So it's a nice little visual aid to what you're doing and lets you know exactly what cells you're including in your function. The next thing we do is we type in the last cell, which is A8. But we need something in between the first cell and the last cell. We need a way of kind of splitting them and saying to Excel that I want you to include this cell the first cell and the last cell, and all other cells in between these first and last cells. And the way we do that is we hold down the Shift key and press the semicolon key. You'll find that key beside the L key on your keyboard. And again, the full colon, which is one dot over the other dot, or one full stop over the other full stop, that's the top symbol on the key. So you have to hold down Shift and the colon key or semicolon key in order to access the colon. This won't work. We'll get an error if we do this when we actually enter in our function. So it has to be Shift and the colon key. And then we put in the last cell in our range, which is going to be cell A8. Now, it doesn't need to be A8. If I just wanted to add up the first 4 numbers, I could go A1 colon A4. Or if I just wanted to add up the 7 numbers, I could go A1 A7. But I want to add all 8 of them. So we've opened a round bracket, so we need to close it, and that is it. That's the format of the sum function, and it's going to be the format that all of the other functions as well, the other 3 functions that we go to look at in this video, will also take. The format will always be the same. It will be equals, the name of the function, and then in round brackets, an open bracket and a closed bracket, we're going to have the range of cells that we want our function to work on. In programming parlance, we would say that these were arguments or parameters that we were supplying to the function. The function needs stuff to work on, okay? It needs data to work on. So in the round brackets, that's where we actually supply the data that the function is going to work on. So if we press the Enter key now, we will get the number 5,949, and that's it. That's all there is to using the sum function. And the great thing is, of course, as we've seen, is that we can change any of these. Because we're using cell references, we can change any of these numbers. I'm going to change these all to 1. And we can see that 1 and 2, 1 and 1 and 1 and 1 and 1 all the way up is 8. Okay? If I make 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2, that's 16. So we can see that we can change any one of these numbers at all. And because we're using, again, if I go down to the cell which has the function in it, and press the F2 key to begin editing it. You can also do it up here. See up in our formula bar that always contains the actual value of your cell. So even though it looks like 114 is in this cell, and it is, the actual value of the cell A9, which is leading to that number being displayed, is this up here, equals sum A1 colon A8. For these videos, I like to edit the functions and formulas and any contents of cells down here because it's just easier to see. So if I press F2, I can see that we're using cell references instead of hard-coded values. So just like in formulas, that means that it's going to add up the numbers in the cells that we're referencing, which means that we can then change any of these values and the answer down here will update automatically. That, in a nutshell, is the sum function. It's very, very easy to use, and it's very, very useful. It's one of the things also that you're going to be doing an awful lot of in Excel. You're going to be adding up a lot of numbers. That is the point of a spreadsheet, after all. It's to crunch numbers, and a lot of crunching is adding numbers up. That's one way of using the sum function. There is another way of using it as well. I'm going to delete the contents of cell A9, so I'm going to delete my function, and I'm going to draw your attention up here to what's known as the AutoSum function. Well, it's a quick way of putting in functions. We'll see how it works with the other 3 functions as well. Now, you need to be careful when you're using this, and I'm going to show you in the next section of the video why sometimes you do need to be careful when you're using it. But it's a quick way of actually using the sum function without doing all that much typing or even any typing. Again, I want to add up these 8 numbers and I want the answer to appear down here. Instead of typing equals, sum, and then so on and so forth, what I can do is I can left click on the AutoSum function, and Excel it's kind of reasoned, it's guessed that I wanted to add up these 8 numbers. If I press enter, I get the exact same value, which makes sense because it's the same number of numbers. So let's do that again. Let's click on AutoSum, and you can see that A1 colon A8 has been placed in it, therefore is automatically. So Excel has it's just made an educated guess, and it's been right that I've wanted to add up these 8 numbers. In other words, the 8 numbers in the cells above where I'm putting the function in. So that's even quicker again than typing equals sum. Now there are, instances where you need to be careful about that, and I'll show you in a future section of why you might need to be careful about that. But that's pretty much all there is to it. Finally, what I'll show you just to prove that you can actually add up different values or different ranges within the cell, I can go A1, A2. And you can see now that the only two numbers that are going to be added by this sum function are going to be the numbers in A1 and A2, and that's 2 and 2 is 4. I could do A1, A5, and so on and so forth. So that's quite useful as well. So in the next section, what we're going to do is we're going to move on to our next function, which is the min function. And the min function is going to show us the smallest or minimum value in a range of cells. In the previous section of the video, we looked at how to use the sum function, which allows us to find the sum, or basically add up two or more numbers. In this section, we're going to look at another function called the min function. That's M-I-N, and that's short for minimum. And what the minimum function does is it allows us to look for the smallest number or the least value in a list or a range of values. As you can see here in my worksheet, I've typed in 8 very similar looking numbers. They're all 5-digit numbers. And looking at these, it would be kind of hard to pick out the smallest one immediately. I would certainly struggle with this. Some people maybe are more comfortable with visually identifying numbers, but I would certainly struggle with this. I'd have to really sit down for anything up to maybe a minute or possibly even longer and figure out, hang on now, which one is the smallest one? And then if you really needed to make sure that you had the right one, you'd have to maybe double check and triple check. What we can do is we can use Excel to do that for us. We can use Excel to tell us which is the smallest number or least number in a field or in a range of cells. This is our range of cells, A1 down to A8. So we're going to use a function to do that. I want the answer to appear down here in cell A9. So in other words, I want whichever one of these is the smallest numbers to appear down here in A9. So we're going to use a function to calculate that. And here's how we do it. Same with formulas and the same with the sum function. We have to begin the min function with an equal sign. We always need to begin a formula and a function with the equal sign, because that tells Excel that what's going to follow should be treated as a formula or a function. So we type in equals and then we type in the following. The first thing we need to type in is the name of our function after the equal sign. So the first thing we need is the name of our function. And you'll see a little box like this pop up. Remember in the first section, in the introductory section, I said that there were lots and lots and lots of different functions in Excel. Excel is now taking min and it's saying, well, do you want the min function? And there are other variations of min. And other ways of looking for minimum values and so on and so forth in different ways, or in terms of different areas of maths. There are lots of different things. For instance, you can hover your mouse over and it will tell you this is the one we want, but you can ignore this box when it's popping up. You can ignore this box and you can just keep typing. So that's the first thing that we have to do. Remember, from the sum function we needed to then open a round bracket, which we got by holding down shift and the number 9. Hold down shift and tap the number 9 on your keyboard and you'll get the open brackets. And then again, we put in the first cell that's in our range of values, or in our range of cells. And the first cell is A1. And again, just like the sum function, it gets color coded. And then we need to put in the last cell, but we need to separate the first and last cell with a colon. We get that by holding down shift and the colon key, which is beside the L key on your keyboard. And then finally we type in the last cell. Now if we want to include all of the cells, I would type in A8. You don't need to include them all. If you just wanted to find the smallest of the first 4 numbers, you would type in A1 to A4 or A1 to A5 or whatever. But I want all of them included, so I'm going to type in A1, A8. So that means include the first cell, the last cell, and all the other cells in between, cells A2 to A7. We've opened a round bracket, so we now need to close it. So we hold in shift and we press the 0 key, and that's it. That's all there is to it. Let's press the enter key, and we can see that the last value is actually the last value, or the least value is the last value, 46,210. Now that was just a coincidence. What I can do, and again, the beauty of using cell references and functions means that if I put in a smaller number anywhere here than 46,210, this value will change. So let's put in 46,000, let's see, 103. That is now, when I press the enter key, this number is now going to be the smallest number in this range of values, which means that the value in cell A9 should change to 46,103. Let's see if it does. And it does. Because this is now the smallest or minimum value in this range of cells. If I do something ridiculous, I type in the number 1 in cell A1, you can see now the function has updated down here to reflect the fact that 1 is now by far the smallest value in the range of cells. So that is, in a nutshell, the minimum function. And its function, pardon the pun, or its role would be, as I say, to find the smallest value in a range of cells. Can be very useful if you have a very, very long range of cells. Like, for instance, you might want to see what you're spending the least amount of money on in a week or in a month. And that's how you would do it. You would actually return what's the smallest amount of money going out each month. And that's how you would do it. Okay, that's the minimum function in a nutshell. We'll look again quickly at the format of it. So I'm left clicking once on cell A9, pressing F2 to start editing my cell contents, and I can see that we begin with an equal sign, which is then followed by the name of our function, min, which is short for minimum, and then in round brackets our range of cells, A1 colon A8. And of course, if you wanted to, you could modify this so that you would only find the smallest value in, let's say, the first 3. Press enter, and now we can see that the smallest value in the first 3 is 46,574. Just to show you an additional way that you can use the min function or access or avail of the min function in very much the same way as we did with the sum function without actually doing any typing. I've deleted my answer in cell A9. I've deleted the function that I had there, and I'm this time going to go up to the on the home tab. Make sure you're in the home tab and go up to the auto sum drop down menu. It's not really the auto sum drop down menu, but the most commonly used function is going to be in there. When you start a new workbook and a new worksheet, you'll see auto sum, but you'll see a down arrow beside it as well. And we can choose. Now we're only going to look at, we're not looking at count numbers, we're only looking at sum, average, max and min. What I'm going to do is left click once on the min function down here and watch what happens down in cell A9. Again, just as with the sum function, Excel has guessed and correctly guessed that it has wanted me to basically find the minimum value in the range of values that were above it, okay, that were above it. And this is correct. I can verify that it's correct. We've got the marching line animated around the selection of cells, just like with the sum function, and we can see that this is essentially what we would have typed in our cells. Press enter and we get the same answer because it's the same thing. It's the same thing that's going in, just without us typing. So that's very, very useful. Just do that quickly again. Just delete this, and I want my answer. I want to find the minimum value from here. So instead of typing in equals min and round bracket and so on, I simply go up to the drop down arrow up here where it says auto sum. You'll see it in the editing group on the home tab. Left click on the down arrow and select the function that you want, which in this case you'll see the most commonly used ones, sum, average, count numbers, max and min. We want min. That's all there is to it. Press enter and you get the correct answer, 46,103. We're now going to look at its polar opposite, the max function. So when we come back, we'll take a look at how to find the maximum or largest value in a range of cells. So in the previous section of the video, we saw how to use the min function to return the smallest or least value in a range of cells. And we can see the result of it down here in cell A9. It's showing us the smallest value or the minimum value in these 8 cells, with the answer being 46,574, which is there. It actually turns out to be the first value. Now that just is a coincidence. It could have been anywhere in between. And we saw that if we change any of these values to being a smaller value, then that answer will be reflected down here in cell A9. That's the beauty of cell references. Functions will allow us to basically have an updated answer in our cell that contains our function when other values change. That's the whole point. So now let's look at how to find the largest or the maximum value in a range of cells. And we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to delete the contents of cell A9 by, it's already selected, cell A9 is already selected. I'm going to press the delete key and I'm going to type in the equal sign because of course functions and formulas always need to begin with an equal sign. And this time instead of min, I'm going to type in the following, max, which is short for maximum. And as a pop-up, little tooltip says there, returns the largest value in a set of values. You can ignore this, ignores logical values in text. What that does is it returns the largest value in a range of cells. And the format is exactly the same. We're going to type in the function and then in round brackets our range of cells. This little box has popped up as well, giving us, these are variations basically of the max function. There are different ways of finding max numbers, different, depending on what area of maths you're working in, there are maybe different kinds of maximum numbers that you can look for. We're just going to concentrate on the first one, you can ignore the others. So just keep typing. So I'm going to hold down Shift and 9, and I'm going to type in the first cell in my range of cells, which is A1, and then the last cell, but separated by a colon. which is very important. So it's exactly the same as sum and exactly the same as min. So equals max, and then in brackets A1 colon A8. And then, of course, we open a round bracket, so we have to close our round bracket. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Let's press the Enter key, and let's see what value we get in cell A9. We get 46,987, which is this one here. So that is the largest value in our range of cells. Let's make, again, let's see how this value will update if we type in a larger number. Let's type in any cell, it doesn't matter. Let's type in 46,989. That should do it, I think. So this now should appear down here because this should be the largest value in the range of cells. And it is. 46,989. So again, the beauty of functions is the values update. The values in a cell which has a function updates if you're using cell references, which we are. Where might you use this? Well, again, like minimum, it depends. You might have a worksheet where you want to discover what are we spending the most on in a month? What are we spending the most on in a year? What's our biggest outgoing? At the moment, these are just values, but I could pre-format the A column by left-clicking on the A column header here, and I could go up to the number group on the home tab, and I could select currency, and I could say, okay, we're spending 46,989 euro in a particular, let's say, year. This might be for a company, obviously not an individual. And I can see that that's the largest value that we're spending in that particular time frame. Now, the one thing we're missing here is labels. We don't have labels beside these. So these, what do these represent? Well, they don't represent anything really, but we won't worry about that. We're just interested in the pure numbers at the moment. So that's it. And notice that making my values, currency values, makes no difference whatsoever to the function. I'm still on cell A9. I'm going to press F2 to start editing again. It's still going to return the maximum value. Okay, currency just means it's a way of displaying the value for to make it more user-friendly for humans, but the number is the number. So that's the max function. And of course, we could alter that function to say you're only looking for the largest value in the first 3 cells, A1 to A3, or in the first 5 cells. But we've just gone with the full range of cells here. So that's the max function, equals max, and then in round brackets, your range of values. Again, we can quickly insert the max function in the same way that we inserted the sum and the min function by using our shortcut, our tool up here in the editing group on the home tab. I've deleted the function that was in cell A9, and I've gone up to the editing group, and I'm left clicking on the down arrow beside auto sum, and this time I'm selecting max. So left click once on max, and Excel again correctly assumes that what I want to do is I want to find the maximum or largest value of the 8 values that are in the cell above where I'm placing the function. So it's essentially just put in what I would have typed in myself, equals max, and in round brackets A1 colon A8, in other words, my range of cells. So much quicker way of doing it. Press the Enter key, and we get exactly the same answer because it's the same thing that we're doing. So just do that again quickly. Delete the function from cell A9, go up to the auto sum drop down arrow in the editing group on the home tab, left click on the down arrow and select max, and that's it. It puts in the max function automatically with the correct range of cells. Press enter and we get the same answer. So min and max are pretty easy. Now we need to look at our final function. There are many more functions, but we're going to look at 4 of them. And the final function that we're going to look at is known as the average function, which will allow us to calculate the average of a range of numbers, which can be very useful. So this last section of the video, we're going to look at the average function. We've already looked at sum, min, and max. Sum allowing us to sum or add up 2 or more values. Min and max allowed us to find the minimum and maximum, or smallest and greatest value or number in a range of numbers. Now we're going to look at the average function, which allows us to get the average of a collection of numbers. So what is the average? Well, without getting into the math side of things, and this is certainly, if this were a maths course, I would not be teaching it, but I know enough to say that, and you probably know it yourself as well, that the average of a collection of numbers is simply those numbers added up divided by the amount of numbers. So if I have 5 numbers, let's go over here to the C column. I'm going to type in these 5 numbers here, and I wanted to find the average of these 5 numbers. What I would need to do is I would need to add up these 5 numbers and then divide the answer that I get by the number 5, because there are 5 of them. If there were 6 numbers, I would need to add up these 6 numbers and then divide by 6, because there are 6 of them. So let's go back to 5. And we're going to use these numbers over here, in fact. We'll also do it over here as well for the currency values, but we'll just do it over here at the moment, just to keep the numbers small. So let's find the average of these 5 numbers. Now, we could do it using a formula, and in fact, let's look at how to do it using a formula. What we could do is we could say equals, and we know that we need to add up these values, so I can go C1 plus C2 plus C3 plus C4 plus C5. And then what we would do is we would divide by the number 5. So let's divide by the number 5. We literally just type in 5. And let's press enter. And we're going to get a value that looks plausible maybe, unless you're very numerically or mathematically oriented. You might immediately look at this number and say, hang on, that doesn't look right. Now to me it looks fine, but I know for a fact that this number is not right because of a problem with my formula. Let's press F2 to go back. Now, if you remember from our BODMAS section where we looked at brackets, order, division, multiplication, addition, subtraction, you will see that, let me type it in over here again actually, just to BODMAS. Let's bring our formula back up. We can see that division is done before addition. Now that's going to be a problem for us here, because what is happening here is that the value that's in C5, which is 24, is first of all going to be divided by 5, because division comes first. And then the result of that, everything else is going to be added. That's not what we want. What we wanted to do is add all of these up first of all, and then divide by 5. So that's giving us our wrong answer. That's why I know that the answer is wrong. To me, it doesn't look wrong because I have no idea that, what the average of these numbers added up would be. But I know that the formula is not wrong so much, but because Excel is just going to do what we're asking it to do, but it's not going to give us the right answer for what we want. So we need to edit this formula. And what we do is we simply stick brackets around the bit that we want done first. We want the addition done first. So we put brackets around the addition part, and then we can leave the divided by 5 off. So let's press enter and see what we get. And we get 9.4. Okay, that's a correct answer. That's a correct answer. So that's one way of finding the average. Now there's a bit of work there because there's 5 cells, so I had to type in equals C1 plus C2 plus C3. You can imagine if there was 10 or 15 or 20 or 100 cells, quite simply you'd be there for quite some time. There are other ways of doing it. You might be thinking you can use the sum and then divide by, and you'd be correct. But there's an even quicker way of doing it again, and it's called the average function. Now let's see, first of all, we could type in equals sum, and then we can go C1 colon C5. And then what we can do is we can divide that by 5. Let's see what we get. We get the exact same answer. So that's an example of mixing a function, which is this bit here, with a bit of a formula, which you can absolutely do. You can mix and match your functions and formulas. And in fact, there are very often times when you will have to do that. So that's what we've done here. Bit of an extra step here, of course, which is dividing by 5. Good news is, there's an easier way, again, of doing it. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to type in the following. Average. There is literally a function called average. Now again, there are different variations of average depending on what kind of averages you're calculating. We're just going to again concentrate on the first one. And the tooltip says returns the average arithmetic mean of its arguments. Don't get fouled up by the very technical terminology that Excel throws at you sometimes. I said in a previous section of the video that the thing that you put in brackets are essentially the arguments. It's kind of a programming term. We supply arguments or parameters or data to a function because every function needs data to work on. So a technical term for that data is parameters. Again, the format of the function is exactly the same. Equals the name of the function, open brackets, the first cell in your range, sorry, in the C column actually, colon, and then the last cell in the range. So that's C5. That should give me 9.4. I can remember that answer from the first 2 ways that I did it, and there you go. That's all there is to that. Let's have a look at it again. Equals average, and then in brackets, the first value in your range, separated from the last value in your range by the all-important colon. Let's do it over here, and let's see what answer we get. Equals average, round bracket. Now this time we're in the A column, so we want to be careful. A1 colon A9. And of course we've opened a bracket, so we need to close a bracket. and that's it. Equals average A1 colon A9. Let's press enter and see what we get. 46,677.44. This makes sense because all of these values are quite similar, and all of them added up then divided by the amount of them will give you, the average of these. So it's going to look like one of these. It's going to kind of be in or around the same range as one of these. So I'll give you another look at that. Equals average A1 colon A9. And that's it. That's literally all there is for us to know, at least, about the average function. Just remember what it is that you're doing. You're adding up X number of numbers, and then you're dividing the answer you get by X. So if it's 5 or 10 numbers, you're adding up the 5 or 10 numbers, and then you're dividing by 5 or 10. And of course, as with the others, we could modify this and only get the average of the first, let's say, 4 numbers, or the average of the first 7 numbers if we wanted to. But we're actually putting in the entire range of cells. And finally, just as with the other 3 functions, we can also use the shortcut for inserting the average function. As you can see, I've deleted what I had in cell A9, and instead of typing in equals average, what I'm going to do is go up in the Home tab. On the Home tab and in the Editing group, left click on the down arrow beside Auto Sum in the Editing group, and I'm going to go down to Average, which you'll see is the second function that's listed in that list of commonly used functions. Left click once on Average, and again, what Excel does is it assumes incorrectly that we want to get the average of the numbers that are in the cells directly above the cell in which we're placing the function. So it's put in what we would have typed in ourselves, equals average, and then in round brackets our range of cells, A1 colon A8, and then we can press enter and we get the same value. I'll just do that again quickly. We go up to the auto sum drop down arrow, and we simply left click once on the function that we want, in this case average, and that's it. We get equals average A1 colon A8, and then we mustn't forget to hit the enter key to actually tell Excel to calculate the answer to that function, and we get the correct answer. So that's the fourth and final shortcut way of using the fourth of our 4 functions that we're looking at. All right, that's our 4 functions. I've got 2 worksheets, or if you like, exercises that you can look at. You'll see them in the description for this video. Just click on the show more link. So work through those. If you have any questions or problems with any of this stuff, by all means, please drop me a line, or you can leave a comment in the YouTube video section. And thanks for watching. In the next section of the video, we're going to look at some charts and some graphs. We're going to see how to actually mess around with some charts and some graphs and actually visually represent the data that we're looking at. So I'll see you in the next section.